Hi, I'm Katie.
I'm Ann.
I'm Karin.
And this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club.
Yay!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our May Book Club.
Hey,
hope y'all
hi.
are doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Yeah. We got a book to talk about today.
Sure do.
Yay.
Before we jump into our book, who wants to talk about what they're knitting? Anybody knitting or crocheting anything exciting?
I'm working on my fall line cardigan, which is my pure black cardigan made in our favorite yarn, Loops and Leafs. No, Loops and
Threads.
Leafs, Loops and Threads. Extra fine merino, I think it's called.
Something like that. Ultra fine? Something
like that. And it's a pretty intensively written pattern. It's like 28 pages or something.
Ooh,
but among those, she has charts for each size with your exact increase strategy.
Ooh, nice.
That I completely misread.
Nice.
I had to tear 20 rows out.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
I didn't have to start over. So there's
That's
that.
good.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right side. My fault. Yeah, my fault, not the pattern's fault.
Whoops.
So, it happens to the best of us. But it's coming along well. It has a big, generous shawl collar, and then it's just raglan shaping.
Cool.
What else?
Cool.
What else are y'all working on?
Karin, what are you working on? Nope, I said it first.
No, I technically did, but the delay got me.
Yep. We'll see what the edit shows.
Okay, so I'm working.
If she did say it first, are you going to flip the testimony?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first if that's what comes through.
Honestly, I think these outtakes are more hilarious. I'm working on I've got the first 2 rounds done on what's called the Gloria Capelet.
Look at that.
And each flower has 6 ends, and at one point I was like, okay, look, that's all I have left to weave in of these 2 before I start round 3.
This is a crocheted floral motif?
A crochet, yes. It's cool. And it has so I'm using some mini skeins from Teal Torch. So in these nice bright colors, as you see here.
They're very neon-y.
And then I have some more solid colors in the yarn that she recommended, which is, I don't know if you guys have used any of Coop Knit's yarn. This is called Socks Yeah. And I've got 6 different colors for A. Huh?
What's the designer's name again?
Sue Maton. She's British, and her videos come out every Tuesday and Friday of every week. And every now and then, just to give people time, she'll say, "Hey, here's just a little bonus video."
Is it a knit along you're doing? Or I guess
it's a crochet along, sort of. It's a crochet class. You go at your own pace. Anyway, that's what I'm working on.
That's fun.
It almost feels like cotton, so it's kind of, even though it's not, because it's just so lightweight. And when it's really hot, it's really hard to be motivated to work with fiber.
Right.
That's fair. I am working on a t-shirt. This pattern is called the 1993 tee.
Oh, that's fun.
So it's what does she say? A baby tee with a shrunken vintage fit. It's like, I saw this picture on Instagram it's by Jessie Mae Martinson, who I love her designs, and I saw it on Instagram, and I've been out of the loop with new pattern releases, and so I didn't know that she had this pattern. But it's a very Katie pattern. I showed it to James, and he was like, "Yeah, you need to make that." So that is what I'm making. These are my colors. So it's sort of
very Katie colors.
It's sort of like an army green, a kind of sapphire-y blue, lavender, white, kind of like a almost aqua baby blue, gold, and a dark charcoal gray. So I have 7 colors that I'm striping, and I have attached my front and back, and now I am cruising on the body. But it's gone very fast. I think I started this on Sunday,
Cool.
something like that.
Wow.
The yarn, I'm looking to see if I have a yarn label in my bag. I think I took it all off. It's from Yarnalia or Yarnalia.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, Marvel. It's the sport weight. I think it's like 60 wool, 40 acrylic or nylon or something like that. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. It's fun because, I have to change color every 6 rounds, and so it kind of keeps me motivated to like add in another stripe.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm just in the stockinette stitch round and round until the body's done phase. So, and I like, it doesn't have any ribbing. It's all like facings, and it's very cute. I like it.
Hey. Looks very well.
I like it.
Yeah, I think I'll probably get a lot of wear out of it. And there's a lot of cute, or maybe not a lot, but there are some cute variations on it in Ravelry with like long sleeves. Then I kind of want to do a like long sleeve version of it too. But we'll start with a short sleeve.
Right on.
It's a nice neckline.
Yeah, it's cute. I'm excited about it. All right. Well, we're here to talk about a book. So who wants to talk about a book?
I do.
I'm ready.
All right. So this was my choice for book. And I chose Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. I've got a little, just the back of the book blurb. They call them wayward girls, loose girls, girls who grew up too fast, and they're sent to Wellwood House in St. Augustine, Florida, where unwed mothers are hidden by their families to have their babies in secret, to give them up for adoption, and most importantly of all, to forget any of it ever happened. 15-year-old Fern arrives at the home in the sweltering summer of 1970, pregnant, terrified, and alone under the watchful eye of the stern Miss Wellwood. She meets a dozen other girls in the same predicament. There's Rose, a hippie who insists she's going to find a way to keep her baby and escape to a commune, and Zinnia, a budding musician who plans to marry her baby's father, and Holly, a wisp of a girl, barely 14, mute and pregnant by no one knows who. Everything the girls eat, every moment of their waking day, and everything they're allowed to talk about is strictly controlled by adults who claim they know what's best for them. When Fern meets a librarian who gives her an occult book about witchcraft, and power is in the hands of the girls for the first time in their lives. But power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. There's always a price to be paid, and it's usually paid in blood. So that is my choice for our book club this month. I know you two are big Grady Hendrix fans, and this was my first of his. So, initial thoughts? How'd you guys feel about this book?
I loved it.
Yeah?
I loved it. I also liked that it had a different feel than some of his other books. Usually there's some kind of humor to it. There's a much more horror aspect, but this one had more community. There was horror, but it was more social horror, and at least I wasn't scared by the magic too much. But no, I enjoyed this different flavor of Grady Hendrix to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's somewhere in the first 100 pages. I was like, Grady Hendrix always writes really intense gore, but he does it really in a very readable way.
Mm-hmm.
You want to leave, look you'd look between your fingers on a movie.
Yeah.
But he does it in such a compelling way always. But it's always gruesome. And the first gore we get is perfectly gruesome. But he really didn't have to embellish on gore because building a human and giving birth to it is a gory thing. All he had to do was state the facts to have his usual level of gore.
That was a pretty compelling chapter when they just started talking about in the most clinical terms exactly what was happening with a birth, and I was like, this is absolutely horrifying.
And some of us choose to do it.
Not the way they did it, though.
No, not the way they did it, no. I think this was a really good intro to Grady Hendrix.
Yeah, one of my first questions, which we already kind of covered, is if you've read other Grady Hendrix novels like The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires or My Best Friend's Exorcism, how does it compare? What themes or techniques seem consistent across his work? Which, we kind of already went over, but...
I'd agree with everything Karin said. I didn't think he had to imagine the horror. It was right there for the taking. But when he does, gosh, whose baby is it? It starts with an M. Myrtle.
Yeah.
When Myrtle started to give birth in the bathroom, I was like, there it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only still, it was just how it goes if you're hemorrhaging while you're giving birth. Maybe she had placenta previa with the placenta in front of the baby, and that's just how it is sometimes. But he nailed it as always.
What do you make
of the fact that
He did some pretty good
research.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that this novel about female experiences was written by a male author? Do you think his portrayal of the experiences felt authentic, not having lived this exact experience?
Absolutely.
But frighteningly authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about his writing is I never heard it as his voice. I heard the characters' voices really well. And so I think and a lot of the characters that he writes are feminine, whether it's a Seven Girls Guide to the Last Girl Support Group. He writes really well from a feminine perspective, and you never get the feeling that a guy is mansplaining in woman talk, right?
I can't think of a male character, like a male main character.
There's not as a main character. There's a doctor. Yeah. No, they're always side characters because even in Horror Store, the main characters were female.
Yeah. And I've only read Horror Store, and I just looked it up. It's the one about the metal band. This is actually only my third of his. I think, Karin, you've read the most. But I'm going to be probably reading everything. I would
definitely read another one. I was very, very impressed with this book and the way it was written. And you're right. I didn't think when I first started, I was like a little wary about the fact that it was written by a male author, but it quickly went to the sideline, and I didn't think about that at all while I was reading it.
The other book I read of his was We Sold Our Souls. Which is about metal bands, and it's from a female.
I want to read that.
Well. Yeah,
I have How to Sell a Haunted House on my shelf. That is going to be another one. Because that sounds good. I like because he presents you with the gore, but he doesn't dwell on the gore.
Yeah,
you're not sitting in it for a long time. You get that gory horror thing, and then he does something light or something to relieve.
Also, it moves the story forward. It always moves the story forward.
It's not gratuitous, like it's necessary.
No.
Yes. Yeah. I did live this experience. Like I was a pregnant, unwed mom, and I just can't believe how well he nails so many of the things that you feel. And it just so good.
The novel is set in 1970, just before Roe v. Wade. How does this historical context inform the story? How does the novel engage with contemporary issues around women's bodily autonomy? And what parallels do you see between the challenges faced by the characters and those faced by young women today? Because this was released in January of this year, so this was post Roe v. Wade being overturned. And he does mention it at some point, I like at the very end, he says, when we're hearing from Fern's perspective, being an older woman and talking about having given up her baby like 50 years ago, or not 50 years ago, however long ago it was.
No,
something like that.
You got it right.
A lifetime.
She says something like she if they had been pregnant or if this had happened to them like a year later or whenever Roe v. Wade was, I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but it was very close to her experience being completely different. And I don't know how intentional of it was for him to release this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I think sometimes the zeitgeist is just the zeitgeist, like the thing of the time, of the moment. Did you guys read the acknowledgments? So he talked about. Did you read it, Karin?
Or maybe I did.
I don't know. I might have heard it. I did the audiobook. Yeah. So
he talked about he knows 2 women in his family who went to these homes. And so this has probably been brewing in his mind for a long time, but maybe the threat to Roe v. Wade has been present for a long time. So maybe that was an impetus for him to finish pushing forward to finish the story. Well, actually, he said it took him 18 months or 14 months. That's in the acknowledgments or something like that.
But Project 2025, if he had known anything about it, has been in the process of being known almost that long. Well, I only heard about it like 6 months ago, but I know that it's been Roe v. Wade has been under threat for quite a while.
Well, I mean,
that was overturned a couple of years ago.
In 2022.
Oh, was it?
So,
okay.
I mean,
so there you go.
It's very possible that was the thing, maybe that's what pushed him forward to tell this story.
Yeah. History is cyclical, which we don't like to remember that history likes to repeat itself. But when I was finishing up the book this morning, I was very saddened to think about the fact that this is something that, we could be rolling back on, and that these poor girls in their circumstances, you would think that we have progressed, 50 years in the future, and things are not looking a whole lot better than they were back then. I mean, they obviously are in a lot of senses, but in some senses it's like, here we are again,
we are there because I don't know if you guys want to briefly mention what's going on to the gal in Georgia.
I don't know this story.
Okay. It only recently came out. There is a woman, 30-year-old woman, who was 9 weeks pregnant. She was feeling sick. She went to the emergency room. They wouldn't listen to her. They did no scans. They just gave her some medicine, sent her home. The next morning, she came back. Her boyfriend found her gasping, unable to breathe very well, took her to the emergency room where, because the way things progressed, she did not do well, and she's brain dead. But because she was 6 weeks. She was 6 weeks pregnant. And because of the rule in Georgia, her body is being kept going, even though she is brain dead, against her will, against her family's will, by the state, because there's a baby involved. They're going to keep her going until 32 weeks as an incubator. And in the meantime, the family's being charged for this. So this lack of body autonomy, we're back there.
Yeah, the social, I mean, things change all the time, but the social aspect of it, the shame of the unwed mother, I would like to think it's not a shame upon the family like it was in 1970 and before that, but the women's bodily autonomy aspect of the story is very much parallel, I feel like, to a lot that's going on right now, and that story is a perfect example of that.
I wonder how much that has to do with pro-life. I wonder if that would have still been a medical ethical question in a different climate, say 10 years ago.
Right.
Because that's tricky business.
10 years ago, the legislation would not have gone through. I heard a really good reverend, a female reverend, who said they're not pro-life, they're pro-birth.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They're not, because once the life's out, they're not caring because they're cutting. Anyway, I don't want to make it into a political thing, but it is the social pulling back, and that's kind of what many of the legislators are trying to do, is go back to that time and before.
Anyway. Hendrix so you already mentioned this, Anne, but it says Hendrix mentions in his author's note that 2 of his own female family members were forced into homes like Wellwood. How familiar were you with the existence of homes like this? While these homes for unwed mothers are largely a thing of the past, how far have we really come from the attitudes that created them? And in particular, in what ways do we see shame used as a method of control today, particularly for young women?
Well, he demonstrates that attitudes really haven't changed much with the way that the book opens with the news clippings from 1927 to 2005 that like society is still looking at the unwed mother as a shameful, unthinking child, whether or not she exercised any agency in that circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different circumstances as to why these girls are here. It's, Fern got pregnant with her boyfriend, and so did Zinnia. A lot of these girls, may have had, a partner or something like that, and made a mistake or whatever. But some of them didn't. There's Holly had no control over her circumstances.
Yep.
But the fact that it doesn't matter what the circumstances were that led up to this, that they're all placed in the same pot and all given the same level of shame and humiliation in it, shows that it doesn't matter at all how they got there, what sort of influence they had in coming to this sort of circumstance. It doesn't matter at all if you're raped by your pastor or had premarital sex with your boyfriend. That's in society's eyes, those are the same level of shame, right?
Yep.
And the girl's still to blame.
Yeah, in every circumstance.
Yeah.
I think that
I don't think it's changed. I think that the society is that
women still carry the burden of whether they are instigator or victim. It's all still put on them.
I don't think you're going to get expelled from school anymore. You don't have to go to one of these homes. You're not going to be you are going to.
You don't have to be sent away for the summer. You don't have to be, and it's not like it's. I'm sure it happens all the time, but it's not a big cover up for the family necessarily. Right. It depends on the family, and it depends on the circumstances. And we're speaking from a very ethnocentric American perspective on this, because I'm sure it's different in other cultures.
There might be areas that are not much different. Maybe they're not being sent away, but they might be. Yeah. You're not going to see them. They might say, "Oh, we're going to homeschool this." During this time.
I think they were safe in talking about this story because it is about the United States. The characters that Hendrix chose to portray show that the shame and weight of this transcended race.
Yeah.
As we've been shown again and again that our country is more sexist than racist, which is something. So I think we're pretty safe in speaking to, from the point of view that he gave us, we could speak to.
Yeah, definitely.
And man, I'll tell you what, guiltily as I read this, I certainly thought, man, it might have been nice to just disappear and reappear. So there's something to the gift of that.
If you chose that.
Decision. Yeah. In the course of everything.
And for Fern, everything. Yeah. Sorry. In the course of everything.
I chose to be a parent and to keep my son. But I experienced all those things. The hungry families that greedily want your child. That's how I felt about it. The walking around town with everyone making their judgments on you, being treated like a stupid child. You know, when our girl Fern gives Holly the ring on the way to the hospital, and she says, they'll treat you better if you're wearing this. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just don't think our world has changed very much.
Right. You'd like to think that we have made progress in that department, but it's not. Yeah.
I don't think so. When
I'm
they can,
speaking 24 years back, but I just don't think it's changed. I just,
Yeah. And it's not a situation that any of these. It's not a situation that any of these girls wanted to be in, and so obviously it's a horrible experience for everyone involved, except for the fact that they had absolutely no control over what decisions they were able to make, even though technically they were given a decision to make. Do you keep your baby or do you give it up? They really didn't have any control over what the outcome of that quote unquote decision was. They had no autonomy for that.
No, because if they chose not to sign, they were being punished. They were sent back. They were isolated. There was a lot of pressure, and I know that, and I still think, regardless of what the head mistress said, I still think there was money, a profit to be made, and they were in. I know she said had something to do with the legacy of her father, but I still think someone was making money.
Oh, she did. No one ever denied. Yeah, no one ever denied in the story that they weren't making money, but they did frame it as what a charity.
She was very offended when they said that she was just trying to sell. When they accused her of just wanting to sell babies.
Yeah, definitely, it's a vocation as well. Also, I'm sure she had to do mental gymnastics to keep herself in a high moral grounds. So once you've done those mental gymnastics to convince yourself of your goodness, you don't want anything that contradicts that entering the scene.
Can we talk just for a moment about their names? These are not the names that we'll get to.
We'll get to that later. Karen, I have some. I have a couple more questions, but So the title refers to wayward girls. Discuss how society labeled and controlled young women in the 70s, and how does the novel explore the concept of waywardness? I guess we already kind of touched on that, but the labels that they are given, like they're loose women or they are whores, I think they're called at one point.
Yeah.
And they are like you were saying, like stupid children, the various ways that you can quote define them. And I think at some point, I think it's when Fern's in the hospital, there's like a couple on the elevator with her, and they say something like, "Oh, kids these days," or like I can't remember what the quote was, but it was like, "Oh, it must be," oh shoot, I started the sentence and I can't remember exactly what it was. It's like what's going on with kids these days? Like, why is it like this? And I don't think that people realize that it has always been this way. Like,
things like this are a shame, the man said. They say it's the generation gap, but I don't know, the woman said. You've got these hairballs smashing up their schools, he said. They don't understand how easy they've got it.
Yeah, they don't understand how easy they got it.
And they're blaming the girl. They're not saying this about the father doing this, right? They're looking at her and she's having to get the brunt of all the judgment.
Well,
right?
It's their names in this are much more gentle than the names. Remember in the Claire, the Irish one we read was so short and sweet.
Oh, yeah.
It's called these
small things like these.
Small things like these, yes,
something like that.
Remember, they were called by the boys' names.
Yeah.
Like, talk about some good rub your face in it shame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this was better.
Yeah, there was a quote that I really wish I could remember, but Fern says something like a man is talking to her, and I don't know, I think it's like the doctor or something at some point, and he says like you don't know how like good you have it or whatever, and she says something like the irony of somebody with so much more privilege saying that to somebody with like me who has absolutely zero privilege at all is like mind-boggling. Like they see it as like, oh, these girls, they, you know, they don't know how good they have it. Like what in the hell does that mean? You know?
Yep.
How does the novel portray pregnancy and childbirth? What purpose do the graphic depictions serve in the narrative?
He's just telling it like it is, like we said earlier.
But you've got a couple different examples of like how this works, right? You've got Fern's experience of like Twilight pregnancy. You've got was it Myrtle, the girl who had her baby in the bathroom? There's Holly, who gave birth naturally and squeezed out a really big baby out of a small little girl. And then there's also Miss Wellwood.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two first stories for Miss Wellwood. There's the insight that we find out that she, as a full-ass grown woman, 28 years old, I believe, was unwed, and her father told her what a shameful person she was and sent her away to a home.
Yep.
And then her magical birth.
Oh, God.
That, I mean, still gory.
Oh, the magic.
But moved the story forward.
God, that was really something. When we got to that chapter and I'm listening to it, or I like half read, half listened to it. I can't remember what point I switched. But I thought to myself, I'm like, this is why Grady Hendrix is a great like horror novelist, because that was so absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Oh, awful. So she gives birth to a bucket full of eels.
Oh, God.
Hagar and
Miriam
guide her through the experience.
Jesus
with
Christ.
So much like gentleness and kindness.
Yeah, like it wasn't the first time they'd seen it.
I know.
Oh, God. Yeah, we haven't much. We've been talking for a little while, but we haven't really touched on the like witch magic part of this yet, because there's so much like social goes. Yeah, there's so much like social commentary and, you know, introspection on that half of it, that like the witchcraft part of it is like almost secondary to the story, right? And so
we don't get the witches until chapter 12, 133 pages in.
Yeah.
And he in the author's notes and the acknowledgments, this had versions where there was no witchcraft.
Yeah, I can totally see this story being told. I wonder if he added that because of who he is as an author, and like, because I feel like this book would have been just as compelling as a story without that aspect of it, but it did make it very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it almost, I don't know, it sort of makes it more palatable.
Yeah.
Because like this is made up. It's not based in reality. Because it's so heavy in all the things that are based in reality.
Sure. It doesn't need that part of it to be. And also it gives an opportunity for the girls to have some semblance of control over their situation.
Yeah.
Because without that, then I don't know how you would get the conclusion of them having, like I said, any sort of control over their situation. That was kind of the only way that worked. And even then, it didn't really work for them.
Exactly. Like it's just that struggle of how are we going to help Holly?
Yeah.
Like it'll all work out, but how are you going to work it out? And like there's nothing. I think there's truly nothing based in reality.
Yeah.
That could have helped Holly.
No, I don't think so either. They couldn't run away. Like Zinnia's plan was never going to work. They couldn't just run away and put her on a bus and she would have been fine. Like that, she obviously would not have been fine.
No.
There aren't any sort of social programs that would help her. Her social worker was the first person that she told about her situation, and then I think at that point she's like, I'm not saying anything to anybody anymore. Like, she stopped talking.
What's the
at
point?
some point.
Because what's the point?
Yeah, she
And
didn't have any other options.
Heart.
Yeah,
when she turns and she says to Fern, Diane's the first one I told.
I know, and you're like, oh, that's brutal. Yeah.
I can't believe that, like, because for Diane, she always keeps up the artifice that she's there to connect and be the advocate for the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Even though she's just as party to
she's in charge of the adoption ring.
Yeah. Her role is to make sure these babies are given up and that the girls are in the mental state to do so, which she does by pretending to be their friend. But the fact that she outed herself so swiftly to poor sweet Holly, and Holly had the vibe on the place right away then.
Yeah. Faster than any of the rest of them did. She's just there to hold up the system, but in a more palatable way for the girls, you know? Like, oh, I'm your buddy. I'm here to help you. And then you feel better about making that decision because you feel like you had someone to talk to or somebody to listen to, or you maybe felt like you had just a little bit more say in that decision because...
Right, convinced it was my decision. Kind of.
Right.
I do feel like it's interesting that Holly, being the youngest, I feel was the most mature. Maybe because of her trauma. Because Rose, who tried to be this, smoking badass, but she still, I feel, was in this fantasy land that she was going to go off and it was just going to be her and her daughter or child. And she was just, all of them still, you get the sense of how young they are because they still totally believe the adults, even though they're not being treated well. I mean, she's thinking about how great it's going to be. She's going to go back and be with her parents. But these are the same parents that put you there in the first place. Right? They're like, maybe, and yet Holly, who's so much younger, she knew things were not going to be good.
When she's the only one that gets to keep her baby in the end.
That's true.
Yeah, but not in any sort of a normal fashion. You know, she had to become the Grand Witch in order to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wonder, like, even Fern's understanding of what was going to happen, like, I think she still would have been herself.
Yeah.
Because
I think
Holly must still be herself. Because of how she ties all the loose ends of the story together. Like, getting the ring to Charlie Brown. Yeah. Like, getting the Reverend to confess publicly to all the children.
That was my favorite part.
I love that.
I would not have looked badly on Fern had she put her foot down and pushed his face into the mud.
No, I was hoping she would, and then when she didn't, I was like, okay, that's fair, but also, like, stomp him, you know?
Yeah, right? Like, is the storm gonna do its work?
Yeah. But, we got a very satisfying ending for that, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Not badly, I've heard that.
No.
And it's just as well that it was Holly who was able to bring justice.
True.
It was her. There's something about her being able to, be the one.
Well, maybe it's sort of like it's not as bad as you thought it would be. Like what Holly gave up to what she gained was maybe not as bad as Fern feared it would be.
Yeah. The thing is that Fern had another option. She wanted to go home. And Holly didn't have any other options. Yep. And the fact that Fern didn't want it, I think Miss Parse states pretty clearly that, like, if you choose this yourself, it's not going to be as bad. Versus if we have to force this upon you, it's going to absolutely break you. And so Holly making the choice on her own to become the whatever you call it, gave her the opportunity to not absolutely lose her mind, right? And but that would have been Fern's. That would have been Fern's fate.
Fern, because she didn't want it, and she would have been forced. I love the title because from the other excellent book you chose, Wayward, we know that is that it can be a reference to a magical woman.
Yeah.
But it has such a negative connotation in language, and at least in Western language. But these wayward girls who are ostracized from society, they were just such ripe vessels in more than one way. Like they were ripe for the magic. I
wonder if there is it's spelled two different ways. Like the other book we read was W-E-Y and this is W-A-Y. I don't know if there's I'm trying to Google to see if that's if they mean two different things or if it's just a colloquial spelling. But my computer doesn't want to Google. I think
one is Old English and one is more modern American.
That's what I'm wondering if the E means like which, because wayward. Okay, here we go. Wayward with an E is a historical word primarily used in Shakespeare's time with meanings like weird or faded or perverse. Wayward with an A, on the other hand, means disobedient, unpredictable, or following one's own whims. But
what are they? Homophones, right?
About how Hendrix creates an air of menace and dread surrounding Wellwood herself. What aspects of the girl's treatment did you find most disturbing?
Think about that. Some of the
taking their identities away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So meant to serve them. Because these girls were reticent, whenever it's brought out, they're reticent to say their name. Yeah.
None of them go by their real names in the home because they are not allowed to. And I wonder how much of that is like they tell them it's for their own protection, right? Because this is a big secret. We're gonna keep your secret. Nobody's gonna know you were here. Or is it a way to, take away their power a little bit and put them in, like right off the bat under the boot,
It kept reminding me of how prisoners are never referred to by their names when they're incarcerated. They're always referred to by their serial number. So it made me think of that.
I always felt it's more of protection for the parents than it is for them.
Yeah.
They don't want someone they've told society and all their friends this story. And if some girl from the home shows up in the future, then their lie is out.
Yeah.
And I think the restrictions were another way. The whole idea, I think her way was to shame and make things so unpleasant that they would never want to do this again, as if they had control over this situation.
And Miss Wellwood is an example. Miss Wellwood is a good example of like how this system turns on you. So as a younger unwed mother who was put in this situation with zero control over her circumstances, to then be the controller of the other people's circumstances gives her own level of autonomy in that she finally has some sort of level of authority over this. And this isn't like the 40s or 50s. Like women had more rights in the 70s than in the past, but like not a lot of options for a single woman,
Nope.
For careers. You could be a secretary, you could be a school teacher, you could be a librarian,
secretary, teacher, nurse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And none of those options give you any sort of, you're not the boss in any of those situations. But she can be the boss here.
In the 70s, you as any of us as women would not have been allowed to have a bank account in our own name.
Yeah.
Without, without a man co-signing for you, whether that be your husband, a brother, a father. I mean, we couldn't even get credit cards until the 80s. So it's, in our own name.
It makes me think
so there's,
like Miss Wellwood uses that to then find her own level of control over the situation. And it makes me think of like current day, what's happening with like Roe v. Wade being overturned, or LGBTQ rights, or like trans women rights, is that in this system of patriarchy, no women have any, like, we are not the ones in control still in 2025, because we still live in a patriarchal society, even though it does look differently. But there are those women, those white, cisgendered, straight women who uphold those values because it benefits them the most. And within this same system that we still work in, even though it obviously hurts women and men at the same time, it's just a way for you to have some sort of semblance of control over your situation, instead of looking to like these girls and relating with them and saying, I was in your situation, I know what it's like, or I could provide a level of comfort to them while they are here. We could make this a pleasant experience for them, because she knew how horrible it was. And it would have been worse for her in, whatever year, the 40s or whenever she went through this. I don't know how old she is. So,
I guess it would be about 25-ish years back in time for her. So, like, you're right, like 1940s.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think sometimes trauma can block empathy.
Right. Or it's look, this is how I was raised. Look at how I turned out. I'm fine.
Yeah, look at me. I'm an upstanding member of my community.
But I don't think she's really fine.
No, she's
I don't think she's fine.
She's crazy.
No, and she's crazy, but she's taking it out on them.
Let's talk about Hagar and Miriam. What role do they play in the novel? And did you enjoy their characterization, or do you wish that they had been more fleshed out? I'm glad that they were in the novel as a sort of an alternative view to this like time and place, because they were two Black women in a very different socioeconomic situation, but within the same household. They worked for Mrs. Wellwood, but you do get a glimpse into like what their home life is, and they are essentially doulas for their community, for the girls in their community that, have to go through this, or even, just the underprivileged in the community, not necessarily that they are unwed mothers or whatever, but, you can't afford to go to the hospital, or it's not safe for you to go to the hospital, and you need somebody in your neighborhood to deliver your baby for you. They're the women who do it. And also, I was glad that they were there as an antithesis to the magic part of it, because Rose and Zinnia are sort of on the fence about like, this is dangerous, or they are trying to trick us, or we shouldn't be doing this. And Fern and Holly are like, no, we want to be witches, let's do it. But in the end, Rose and Zinnia are right.
Yeah.
I think you're giving Rose too much credit. Rose was reticent at first until she saw how it could benefit her.
That's true.
And then,
that's true.
Then she left Fern holding the bag.
Yeah.
She's like, promise you're going to do this.
Yeah. The skepticism, like Zinnia, is to be lauded, because even though she was the first for it to benefit, and greatly so, and then they got to see when her morning sickness was transferred to the doctor, they got to see some retribution in action. And so the satisfaction and the benefit, Zinnia was still able to see the danger and the risk and the falsehood of it all.
And I think it also goes to play, like, the novel isn't necessarily about race, but it goes to show that Zinnia is a black girl, and she's in the same boat that Hagar and Miriam are, in that they have experienced, like, underprivileged, or, I mean, Zinnia is a more privileged person because her family can afford to send her to this home, but they share the same level of skepticism as far as, like, I don't trust this, and it goes to show that they have lived a very different experience than the white girls in the home. You know what I mean?
Entertain.
I feel like the book portrays Hagar and Miriam to the level that the girls' awareness would be. Yeah, because they were basically servants and caretakers in the house, but they were not friends with the girls. They did look out for them and take care of them because they knew that there was some bad stuff out there, and they even did what they could to protect. They're like, yeah, this is dangerous, but we're not going to tell you you're crazy, because we're not going to say magic doesn't exist, because it does. And this is the danger of it. And we're going to do what we can to protect you, but we are at risk if we help you too much.
Yeah.
But I think not having them as primary characters, because the main characters would not have seen them. They would, they were still part of the background of the house.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And what can you do for me,
Yeah.
Oh, you lost your pouch?
It wasn't until Hagar actually, did when she was helping them, that they were like, oh, here's somebody who can help. Finally, someone who listens to us and doesn't just treat us like we're crazy, and then they're cling on to that. Like, yeah, you can go to her house and maybe she'll let you stay there for, until the baby's old enough. And it's like, oh, child.
Right. But, well, and it's more like Hagar, like, she wasn't helping them. Like, I never saw her helping them. I saw her just the way she cooked for all the girls and nourished all the girls. Like, this is the thing that has to be done so that things work right.
Right. Yeah.
Or that more damage and destruction wrought on our daily lives.
Yeah.
Like, she's a servant to what must be done, even.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, somebody has to take care of this. I'm the one that can take care of it. This is my last question. How did you feel about the ending? Was it satisfying to you? Was it bleak? Was it emotionally devastating? Was it lacking in justice or resolution? Or did you find it fitting? Like, how did you feel about the way it was wrapped up?
It was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, what else could happen to these girls? Like,
this was never going to be a happily ever after story.
No.
I am glad that that even though it was happiness delayed, that she was able to connect with her daughter in the future. But
Rose was able to find her daughter, and Zinnia was able to find her son, even though it didn't work out. But at least that they were able to then, that she had the option to. I finished it this morning. I read it like the first half, and then I took a break for a while, and then I just finished it up so I could like have it fresh in my mind. So I just finished it this morning, and I was crying in my car on the way to work with this ending. Yeah. It was emotionally devastating. I feel like it says emotionally devastating, quote, in a good way, which is exactly how I felt. Is like when you get the reveal that Rose and Blossom are together and they do live in a commune, and it took them a little while to get there, but they were able to make their goals. That made me happy. And then she calls, she's so nervous to call her daughter she's the one that reached out to her after finding her. And she's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to call her. And then she does. And she's telling her it's okay. And she's glad that she called. And I was, it was such a good ending. And it made me think, like, a man wrote this book.
I know.
I'm telling you.
I feel like it was such a good as a person who is not a mother, like, such a beautiful portrayal of adoption and the different ways that can work, because I I have a family that has a lot of adoption in it. My husband's adopted, his mother was adopted, his uncle was adopted, his cousin is adopted. Like, their whole family was built on adoption, and all of their adoption stories are different because James's mom was the baby of a wayward woman who was born in 1959 or whatever. So she would have been in this situation, right? I can't speak to what her circumstances are because we don't really know her. I think James has met his birth grandmother once, or not his birth grandmother. This would have been his mother's birth mother. But their situation turned out beautifully in that they found each other later in life. Her mother was able to reconnect. They had a nice, very friendly, warm relationship. And then there are other circumstances of people in that family who either do not care to find their birth parents or have, and it's like, I don't care to know them. You know, there's a lot of different ways that can be portrayed that I felt like this spoke really well to that aspect, because it's not really necessarily a story about adoption, but it wraps up like that, and I thought it was just so well done.
Yep, it was so well done.
Yeah. Good job, Grady Hendrix.
I was thinking about someone I am acquainted with in my past, whose name is also Holly, who gave up a child, and we talked about that a little bit, and how she just really desperately hoped that when he was, I think he was would have been maybe 15 when I knew her, so she was counting the days to hoping that, and she had 3 kids already in her new life, so she wasn't for want of motherly care, but she still thought of this child every day and hoped that in a few years that he would reach out to her. I never got to know if he did or not, but
yeah,
just thinking of her. This book was great. It had me crying in lots of places.
Do we want to do a 1 out of 10? How are you rating this book?
A 10.
A 10, yeah.
Yeah, I
and it's not because I'm biased about Grady Hendrix.
I'm hesitant to just give out a 10 because it's a perfect book, but I really can't think of many faults for it. Maybe a 9.5 because I don't know what I'm going to read in the future that's going to be the perfect 10. But
9.75.
Sure. I'm going to give it a 10. I'm holding my 10 because here's the number one. Number one, I want to read it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how
I want to read more from this author.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I felt about Wayward. That's how I felt about the thing. I just saw the cover of the book a minute ago.
Oh, the time
Department of,
whatever that one was called.
Time Travel.
Oh,
yeah. I'll look it up, but
I know the one.
Let's do a real
that has go ahead.
Let's do a real quick, because we're running a little long today, but let's do a real quick, what else have you guys read this one? Because I don't have any.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Give me a moment to pull it up. Because I listened to quite a few books today. This month, I listened to Storm, Dawn of a Goddess. It's a Marvel story, and I had the book, but I hadn't opened up the book yet, so I was very surprised it was not a graphic novel. It's an actual book. But it's really good. It's the story of that.
Thank you. The Ministry of Time.
That's it.
Which I read 3 times. Same with Wayward.
I read Killer Kung Pao. I'm reading Invisible Women. It's about data bias in the workplace and actually in life. The Color of Compromise is a story of how the church is complicit, how the evangelical church and the traditional churches are complicit in keeping racism and systematic oppression going in our country. And I'm about halfway through Take a Hint, Danny Brown.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I gotta read those, the other 2 books. I didn't read a lot else. I read one that I don't know if you guys will follow on, but you might want an update. The second book from Isabel Ibanez, What the River Knows. Is that what it was?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Her second
I thought about
book,
the second one.
Where the Library Hides, is is out now. It was fun. It was better than the first one. I have a feeling that it was a giant book that they couldn't fit into one book. I don't feel like the two are standalone stories, but the resolution, it is just a duology. The resolution was satisfying and cute.
Okay. Oh, good.
And then I read a book by Wilkie Collins called
Wilkie Collins, classic.
Yeah.
The Woman in White?
The Woman in White, yeah. Really good.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It is one of my favorites. Classic.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
I never heard of him, and then I started like that. That it has a name where like you learn a new word and now you notice it everywhere.
Yeah.
So I noticed people making references to him several times.
He's very much in that Victorian Gothic novel style. If you like all The Secret of Being Earnest or any of the Wuthering Heights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's a little more Bronte, but lighter than the Bronte sisters. Tangled Web, all about English politeness and the good word of gentleman. It's very good. Very readable too. Like sometimes that period of literature is so dense. You kind of like I'll kind of zone out.
Get bogged down.
But everything about it was engaging. It was 25-hour audiobook though. So it does
the Woman in White.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I read it back before their audiobooks were not in existence when
it's
I read
probably
it.
Like a 400 to 500 page book for sure. At that length, it went on and on.
I never see a storm in a Victorian house without thinking about someone on the roof. Am I mixing up my stories?
Yes. No, you're not. You're perfect. I just had to think about. I had to think about why you were saying that, and yes, absolutely. So yeah, those are the two things that I read, and I physically read this book. So
nice.
I have my great.
This was a good like physical read. Like it was very engaging, and I wanted to keep going, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just ran out of time to finish that way, you know.
Well, I like to listen to the sample when I read a book, so I get a sense of what kind of narrator they had, and I think she was probably a very good narrator.
I think there were maybe multiple because there were a couple different.
Were there?
Unless she was like voice acting, I felt like the portrayal of Fern as an older woman sounded different, and there was a little bit of a different intonation between like the Witchcraft for whatever it's called for Groovy Witches segments. It just sounded a little bit different, but I don't know. It could have been all the same person, but she did a great job.
So
if it was,
oh, speaking of that, what did you guys think about the little excerpts from the book within the book?
I think they were good. They seemed to each forecast what was coming. What is that called? Foreshadow what was coming. And kind of focus you in on like, this is what you should be paying attention to now. Like,
but without being obvious.
Right. I have to say the tone shift of like, they're going to become powerful, vengeful witches, and I am so here for this. And then they're building the storm is coming, and it doesn't come. And Hatcher's like, what were you doing? I really appreciated the tone shift there because it was like, calm down, Anne.
That's actually a really good point, is that you were like so hype in the first half for them to get this power and to learn witchcraft, and you're like, yes, this is great, I'm here for this. And then like about halfway through he does this beautiful artful shift where you're like, oh, this is out, you're out of your league, you know, this is scary, you gotta stop what you're doing. Great. What are we reading next, Dan?
Okay, I have to apologize.
Okay.
Because this doesn't take an audiobook.
What?
But it's not a very big book.
Okay.
It's called, I had something in mind, and then I couldn't find the physical book when I ran to Barnes & Noble before we met. And I like to hold the book. So I was like, well, maybe I could look around and see what else. So we are in Asian American Pacific Islander month.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was shifting, I thought, well, it might be nice to choose an Asian author.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have chosen Under the Eye of the Big Bird. It is the International Booker Prize. It's been shortlisted for the International Booker Prize this year, which are usually pretty superb books. In the distant future, humans. I think it's going to be good, guys. So don't let this back the book. In the distant future, humans are on the verge. Did I say the title yet?
Yes, you did.
Under the Eye of the Big Bird.
You didn't say the author.
Under the Eye of the
Big Bird.
Okay. Sorry. Let's try
Who's
again.
the author?
Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. It's translated from Japanese by Asa Yonida. In the distant future, humans are on the verge of extinction. Those left have settled in small tribes across the planet under the observation and care of mothers. Some children are made in factories. Some live by getting nutrients from water and light, like plants. The survival of the race depends on the interbreeding of these children and other alien beings, but is far from certain that connection, love, and evolution will persist among the inhabitants of this faltering world. One of Japan's most brilliant and sensitive contemporary novelists, this speculative fiction masterpiece rewrites our understanding of reproduction, ecology, artificial intelligence, communal life, creation, love, and the future of humanity, and offers us an astonishing vision of the end of our species as we know it.
Fascinating.
It says,
that sounds good.
New York Times Book Review says, haunting, ... finds humor and warmth in the puzzles of existence and extinction. So I'm hoping this will be a really lovely journey and not too much of a bummer. But it sounded really good.
Okay.
So sorry that there's no audiobook. It's only 286 pages.
That's fine.
That's not too bad.
78 pages.
I'm trying to read more physically, so that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
So,
well, we hope you guys join us next month for that. If you have any comments, or if you have any, wise insight into Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, or if you have any suggestions for future books, please let us know, because we take those into account, and we would love to hear what you thought about this book, if you loved it as much as we did. If you have any criticisms, we couldn't find one, but you might. I'd like to hear those too. Let us know. Leave a comment. Send us an email. You can find us online at Strings Unraveled on Instagram. You could send us an email at stringsunraveled@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks when we do our regular podcast, where we just mostly talk about knitting and crocheting and all the fun things that we're making. And then a month from now, we'll talk about another book. So thank you guys for being here. Make sure you check out our Patreon. Also, if you want a little bonus from us every month, we do a little mini episode. That's patreon.com/stringsunraveled. And we'll talk to you all in a couple weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.